Okay, this is the part that we will make right now, and it's a little fixture that holds the LED ring. And so I've modeled the LED ring ahead of time, so I'll give you that to start, so you don't have to make that. But we'll be making these two pieces here. Let me hide some of the pieces so you can see. So that's one piece, and then we'll be adding the second piece there, and that's the LED ring. Okay, the first thing you'll want to do is open up the file called Ugly Lamp Given Parts. And then down here, you'll want to find the LED ring. So that's right here. And then you will want to right click and say copy to clipboard. And then you can go back to your documents. And if you haven't already, you'll want to create a new document. And this will be for the LED ring fixture. So this should be either an empty file or you can insert it into an existing file. And then you'll come down here and hit the plus and say paste tab. So that will put the LED ring in there. And that just saves you from having to make that ring again. I've made that ahead of time. This is the first piece we'll make as part of the fixture. And I'll show you, the sketch here. So we'll be making half of this arm. And that's a technique that's very useful if you have symmetry in your part. You'll want to sometimes just sketch out half of the part and then use some mirror features to just mirror the parts or the sketch entities through some type of center line. So we'll be going over that. So we'll create the sketch. Let me see if I can roll back to here. So we can, so we'll create the sketch and then we'll create an extrusion of that sketch. So we'll just take the sketch that I made, extrude it out, and then we will use a mirror feature to mirror half of that sketch, and then you'll get the full shape here. And then we will add some fillets, which are just these little rounded pieces, and other things just to smooth off the edges. And these mate connectors are needed for the assembly. First thing you'll want to do is create a new part studio. So go in here, create part studio, and then you can rename it as fixture 1, LED fixture 1. And what we want to do is bring in the LED part that we had just imported or pasted in into this file. So what we want to do is click on this button here that says derived, and then you can select the ring, and that should bring it in, and you say okay. So what that's done is that's essentially directly brought in the LED ring into this file. So if I make changes to this LED ring file, it will update and everything will stay according to this same part file. So that's what I want to do. And now you can see in my tree over here, I have the derived LED ring. So the next thing I want to do is create a sketch. So I click on sketch, and then I'm going to click on the top plane for my sketch. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just use the line tools. So here's the line tool here, and make sure that you click the construction button too, so that the lines are dashed. And you'll want to sketch out this basic shape. And the reason why I use construction lines, I think of them as the skeletal system of your CAD. And so I usually create the core shape using construction lines, and I dimension those lines, and then I essentially put a wrapper around them of the actual solid lines. And I think it will make sense after you have some practice of why I do that. So you'll want to sketch these out. Some of you might have your units off. They might be in inches. So you'll want to come over here and go to this 3 horizontal line option here, workspace units, and change from inches to millimeters, and then say OK. So double click back into the sketch. you'll want to add the constraint that this line is the same as this line. So you highlight both of them by clicking one and then holding shift and clicking the other and then hit the equal constraint here. You'll want to add this dimension, so I'll delete it and then add it back. So to add the dimension, you just click on the line and then you'll type in 60 millimeters. And then you're going to want to add the angle here. So to do that, you'll click on the dimension button, click on one line, click on the other line, and then you'll type in 35 degrees. And then for this one, you'll want it to be 10 millimeters. So you just click on that line, you get the dimension button, click on that line and dimension it to be 10 millimeters. What's interesting at this point is that since it's not fully constrained, you can drag it around quite a bit. So we'll end up adding some other constraints and dimensions in a little bit. Okay, now you zoom in here, and what we want to do is we want to use some of the geometry from this LED ring. So the way to do that is to use this use convert button. So you'll come over here and actually just grab that and then come over here and click on that edge. Now I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to click on it again and I'm going to turn it to be a construction line. So now I have this construction line that's the edge of that LED ring. You could probably see it there. You can kind of see as I zoom out there what we have. So it's really nice you're able to use some of the geometry from that LED ring. And the reason why, as you'll see here, is that we're going to create this arc. That's basically the little notch that's going to hold in the LED ring. That arc. So we're going to come up here and we're going to get a 3-point arc. So you have these different arc options. So you get a 3-point arc, and you'll come down here, click there, and you'll click here, and just try to create that arc like that. Okay, and I'm going to come back here and reference. So we want this arc to be the center of it, right on the center of the LED, which makes sense, this LED ring. So I'm going to create a center line that comes directly out there and that goes to the center of that arc. And then I will want that to be horizontal. So basically that puts the center of the arc at the center of the LED ring. And you can always kind of drag it around and see how the shape changes. Here I've dimensioned it as 1.25 millimeters. So let me go ahead and throw that dimension in. 1.25 millimeters. And then I will want to extend this line in because that's what I have here. I want it to come in all the way there. And I'll want to make this line tangent with the arc. So I select the line and the arc, and then I look for this tangent constraint. And that should do that. Okay, one thing I noticed was that when I converted this line over from the LED, it's unconstrained still. So I need to add a constraint. I need to click this little dot, and then I need to click this line, and then hit the coincident constraint. And see, that turns from black to blue. So now that's fully constrained. And now I need to add a couple more dimensions. So I'll add that 4 millimeter dimension here. So I can, I'm going to go ahead and fill this line in because I'm going to be drawing a solid line in there in a little bit anyway. And then I'll go ahead and dimension that line to be, I can hold this and do 4 millimeters. Okay, so another issue that I had can be solved by making a hidden line or a construction line that goes from the top here down to the bottom of the arc, and then clicking on that and then making that vertical. And so you can kind of drag on it and see, but that essentially constrains the arc the way we want it. And then we need to add a dimension that basically the back edge of the LED, let me see, get the dimension, there we go. We want that to be 1.75. So what happened there is pretty much all the lines and points turned from from blue to black. So that means everything at this point is fully constrained. So this is the overall shell, the skeletal system we need for the CAD. And you can see here that this is what I eventually want. I need to add this horizontal piece. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And then I'll sketch around with solid lines the overall shape. But I also need to add these circles and this rectangle. So let me go ahead and do that too. So let me add these. So I can come up here and I'm going to create a solid line. It's going to go from here over to here. And then it looks like we want that dimension to be 7 millimeters across. So I come here and I dimension it 7 millimeters. Okay, and then I need a circle up here. And the circle placement looks to be just along this line here. So it looks like I can create first a hidden line or a construction line. So grab the circle, go construction, create the circle here. And then the question is, how is it positioned? And I think what it is here is that it's equal distance from each side. So the length from here to here is the same as the length from here to here. That's kind of a geometric constraint. So what I can do is create a line that goes across there and make that a construction line. And then make another line that goes from here up to the top. And I click on that one, and then I hold shift and click on that one, and then I make them equal. And that will position that circle. And so I cannot move the circle anymore, but the overall diameter has not been fixed. So the diameter is this 0.2660 inches, which that is specified because it's the clearance hole for the type of bolt that we're going to use. So I can show you that separately, but you can look up on a table how to size a clearance hole, and that's the dimension. You can put it in millimeters or inches, 6.756 millimeters. Then I need to come in here and add the rectangle. So the rectangle, again, I did as a hidden line initially. And so I come here and create a rectangle, and I want to do the center point rectangle. So click on that, and then construction line. And then it looks like I can just click up here and create this rectangle. Okay. And then the dimensions are set by the bottom of the rectangle is 7 millimeters up from this line there. So 7 millimeters up. So dimension that to be 7 millimeters. And then the overall height is 14 millimeters. And then the width is 3 millimeters. Okay, so now I need to come through and add the solid lines, because I believe here I now have all the key dimensions already specified. So let me come back here and then just sketch over these hidden lines with solid lines. So I come over here, come down here, and just create the lines. I have to zoom in here. Well, I've already made that one when I dimensioned it. So I click here, going up to this line. That one's already a solid line. So I come up here, there, and then I just trace out. So that's why these construction lines are really nice. Let me make sure that I got that one. Yep, I did, but I'll try it again now. Okay. And then I want to create that arc. So to create the arc, I can do it a lot of different ways. I'll just do, oops, let me try, it should be a 3-point arc, so I should be able to click here, here, oops, let me try it again. Let's click the arc. And then I can click, left click, and drag that right into the center. And then you should have all black lines and arcs. Okay, now that we have the sketch, we want to make the extrusion. In order to extrude a sketch, you should see that it has to be grayed in. So if you don't see the gray that's enclosed these outer lines, that means that one of your lines in there are still hidden and not made to be solid. So you have to add that solid line, and you should see this gray. Once you've done that, you can click on the sketch and then hit extrude. And there are a lot of different options up here for extrusion. So you can do new, you can do add, and so on. So we want to do a new, and we want to go 2.5 millimeters in one direction, but we actually want it to go in two directions to be 5 millimeters total. And this is just kind of a minor detail. So I can click on the face of that sketch, and then I say OK. So that looks pretty good. And then what I want to do is mirror. So I go to the mirror entity, the mirror feature, and then I click entities to mirror, and I click on that. And then the mirror plane is here. And then I want to merge with part 2, that's right. Let me see here. So in the settings here, you can see it's new, add, and remove. So in this case, I want to do add, and I want to merge with part 2, because that's the 1/2. So then now it's a solid. So you should really just have down here in your part tree, part 1 and part 2. And part 1 is the LED ring, and part 2 is this part that we just added. So that looks pretty good. And now I'll go back and put some fillets. So they're just kind of rounding the corners. So I click the fillet, and then I can just click on the edges that I want. And then you can put 2, 3 millimeters, whatever you would like. You can kind of experiment with it. So you just need to click on these edges that you want rounded. And I could have done this before I mirrored it if I wanted to. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go back, and I want to add these holes on the side, which are going to be used for the zip ties, to zip tie your wire. So this is just an example how you can go back and edit a sketch. So I double click on the sketch. I can zoom in there. I can come in here, make some construction lines across that one. And then I want to come down here, and there really, it doesn't have to be specific. Like I said, these are just for zip ties, so just put in something that's reasonable. You do have to add a couple constraints here. You have to make these two lines parallel, so you can come up there, parallel, and then you do have to set the distance from the edge. So in this case, I think, yeah, I had 1.5 millimeter from the edge and a 3 millimeter diameter circle. So I can go ahead, I need the circle in there first. So I come in here, and then dimension this to be 3 millimeter, and then I can dimension this to be 1.5 millimeters from the edge. And then this can be dragged anywhere. I didn't really even specify it in my file here because it's just kind of approximate. So you can just kind of put it up here. It's where the zip tie will go. And then we need another one up here at the top. So that one, it looks like it's kind of in the center line, I guess. So I can create a circle and just put it right in the center. And then make this one equal to this one down here. So highlight both of them and hit the equal. So that should do that. And then if I say OK, then the holes will already populate on both sides because of the mirroring. So that's that kind of that nice aspect. The next part we're going to make is that second piece. I can look at the assembly here. It's this piece right here. And we're going to make it based on the same geometry. We're going to leverage the geometry that we've already made to create this second one. So you'll want to come over to your part and create a new part studio. And I'll call this LED Fixture 2. And then what I'll want to do is the same derived feature before. So I click the derived button, which is here. That's going to pull in the geometry of this part 2, which is what we want to bring in. Okay, so that allows us to essentially utilize this geometry, and you can see this is what I did over in this part. I'm going to build the second piece right on top of that first piece, but then in the end we'll only use this piece. So it's a really slick way that I don't have to recreate the whole geometry. So I'll create a sketch, and I want to create a sketch on the face of this part. And then what I want to do is, I can do this a couple different ways, but essentially I want to extract the curves from this shape that we've already created. So it's that same use tool, and I can just click individually through them all, or I could just like highlight them all like that, and then it will get them all. So I can go ahead and do that, click that one, and it gets all those. So I think it got all of them. I'll just want to also get these other lines. So let me see so click on that again. I want to get the circles. So I think we're good there. And I want to convert this line to be a hidden line, and I'll show you there our construction line, because I actually want to modify that a little bit. So there's that, and then I want to add an arc, and this will all be apparent in a little bit. So add the arc there, and the dimension I want to give that is 14 millimeters. So I'll dimension that from the arc down to this line, and we want that to be 14 millimeters. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to add this little notch that will slide in, and So I create the rectangle, and then I made that hidden so I can fill in this line here. Okay, but as of now, this thing should be able to slide around. Yeah. So what I want to do here is create two constraints. So one is that this should be coincident with that line, and that will bring them lined up, essentially collinear. And then do the same thing on this line. Select these two lines, and then make them collinear. And then the final dimension that I need here, let me see if I can see it here. Yeah, I want this to come all the way up to the very bottom of this. So I want this to come all the way up here. So the way I can do that is click that line, and then make them coincident. So that's this coincident constraint. And then everything should turn black. And it does. So if I say OK, I can now create an extrusion, clicking the extrude button, and then I can click on the sketch. And then it turned red, and I think it's because it says add, and I actually just want to do a new part. I don't want to add to this back part. And then, like before, I can do the 2 directions, or just the 5mm. So I'm just going to do 5mm for the thickness, and then do that. So you can see here that I have 2 parts. That's the back one that we started with, and this the new one that we created. And I could rename this part as Fixture 2, so I kind of know which one it is. And then I can hide this one just by not showing it. Okay, next I'd like to be able to make this assembly. So to do that, you need to use mate connectors. So this is what it'll look like in the end. I'm going to go ahead and go back and show you how I did this. So to make the mate connectors, they're basically the points at which you want to connect 2 parts together. So I need to first create a mate connector in my individual parts. So if you look up here, you can see this mate connector. And then you can click there, and then you can say owner part, and I want to put this in part 1. So I click part 1 and then say OK. And then I create another mate connector. Actually do the same. This will make sense in a little bit later. And then I want to do OK. And then I can come down here and create a new assembly. So create an assembly. An assembly is essentially putting multiple parts together. And I can say insert, and then I can click on that and say OK. And then I'm going to want to add these mates on there. So I'm going to do the fasten mate, and I'll do mate 1, fasten to mate 2, say OK, and then I'll insert the other part, which is this LED fixture 2. And actually, I just want to bring in fixture 2. I don't want to bring in this one, so I'm going to delete that. Let me see. Okay, so this one got brought in. I'm just going to delete this and delete this one. Okay, and then what I want to do here is I need to add a mate connector up here. So I'm going to add the mate connector because I'm going to mate this surface to this area over there. So I add a little surface mate connector there. Okay. Say OK. and then come over here and create a make connector in there. Say OK, and then I can take both of these and do a fasten, but I need to rotate it around. So I do that rotate, and then say OK. So this is the assembly. And what's good about doing that is you can see here that this thickness is off, so this must not be the right thickness. So I'm going to go ahead and go back and change that. So I'll go back to the individual parts. So I go to LED fixture 1 and look at this extrusion, and it looks like it was 5 millimeters. It should have just been 1.5 millimeters in each direction, which will be 3 millimeters total. So I can change that, and then I come over here and I want to do fixture 2. So I go to fixture 2 and then look at that extrusion, and that must be the same. Yeah, and I really wanted 3 millimeters. So sometimes you make these errors, and it's nice. You can come back and check it and do a quick update. So it automatically updated, and you can see here now it all fits together. And you could, analyze it more, make sure everything's correct. You kind of come down here, and this looks correct, even though it's interfering there. It's actually what allows the LED ring to be held pretty tightly as it kind of flexes back and then pinches it really well. So I can rename this as LED fixture assembly. And the next thing I want to do is create a two-dimensional drawing that then I can use on the laser cutter to cut these two files. So to do that, you go down here, you click Create Drawing. These are the different template sizes, so it kind of is different depending on what you've made so far. You can go to ANSI and ISO. I'm going to go ahead and just click on one of the millimeter ones. It doesn't matter. You can check what the different sizes are, because we're going to delete everything anyway, though the overall size changes for the different template sizes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll exit out of this. Imagine you've got this drawing here. I'm going to first delete everything. I'm just getting a blank sheet, and then I'm going to insert, and then I just want part 2. Now you can see here that you got to check to make sure the scale is 1:1, and then you got to change the view orientation until it gets to the large rectangle. That's kind of what we want. That's just switching to the different planes. So you click there, left click, and you accept that, and then you can hit escape, and then you insert another part, and we want to insert, and then I want to go to the LED fixture 2, and then I click that one, and then again make sure it's 1:1 scale, and then it looks like the top view is what we want, and just position them pretty close to each other, because we'll be cutting them on the laser cutter. You could also nest them down like that, so that might be a good way to do it too. Okay, so then I can come down here and rename that of LED fixture drawing. And then what I'm going to want to do here is right click, and I'll want to export, and then I'll want to export as a PDF, and you can see where you want it to save it, and just the name is fine, and just hit export. Okay, that did that. So now I would want to go inside of Illustrator and change the line type, so I'll do that. So I want to get the selection tool, select all the lines, and it really depends on how yours is set up, whatever computer you're on, but you basically need to change the stroke or the thickness of the line to 0.001, and then you need to come over here to the color and pick the color as red. Okay, and then again, you got to make sure that's 0.001. Okay, and that's it. It's just changing the line type, thickness, and the color red in 0.001. And then I save it, and then I should be able to open it up on the computer with a laser cutter and send it directly to the laser cutter to cut it